Hi, my name is Steve Yamamoto. I'm the pre-visualization supervisor on Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. This scene here is the introduction of the Fallen, who's the main reason why the Autobots and the Decepticons split. His face is supposed to be the icon of the Decepticons. When the Fallen sees the humans, he thinks that they're insects. The Fallen has created this machine called the Harvester, which essentially would kill our son. This sequence was animated primarily by Chris Williams, Rob Dressel, and Kyle Robinson. We created about 55 minutes of material for about 50 separate sequences. The first bad guy or Decepticon comes right here. Michael didn't want to see the transformation yet, so we hid him behind all these giant concrete pipes. And then all war breaks loose here. This sequence contains what I think is the best shot in all of previs, which is the shot where Wheelbot comes through the 4-lane concrete overpass and Optimus jumps on top of him. This shot really set up the rest of the movie and the scale of the movie and what this movie was going to be above and beyond the first movie. One thing about showing shots of that scale, you really need a lot of objects that the audience can relate to, such as the cars and Optimus, to give it that scale reference. From the very beginning, Michael wanted to introduce a bunch of different robots with a lot of different capabilities and styles and forms to them. This one was unique in that we had these motorcycle girls as one-legged characters, much like inline skaters or skateboarders. This character, I like the way he transforms because it's very smooth. This combination motorcycle never made it into the movie. And again, here's another character with a different form, which is modeled off of actually a roller derby character, very tough and mean. This action here where he jumps over and throws the blade and splits the car in half was done by an ILM animator as a test originally. This sequence is an example of what I call one of Michael's signature shots. For the sequence, it's the hero's entrance or introduction, where we go around him a few times. It's very similar to the one in the first Transformers movie where the camera revolves around him or orbits around him. I think in this case, we should have cut right about here because you can never actually shoot that shot. This scene was one of the first ones that I animated, and it wasn't so hard that it was a complicated scene, but we do have 10 transforming robots within the scene. And it usually takes about 2 weeks to create a fully transformable robot. There are a couple of cases where you'll see where we faked it, like that guy who was the disposal. You don't see him transform. One of the shots or moments, again, little character moments that we inserted that I really liked. Here was one part where the microwave bot destroys one of these guys. Here's kind of a little bit that I kind of liked, where the leader of the kitchen bots felt the water hit his head, and he goes to get his troops to go find out what's up there or who's up there. The other thing that kind of made this really challenging is that since it was one of the first scenes that we had animated to, we didn't have any designs from the art department of the characters, so we had to build them all ourselves. And here's Bumblebee's disproportionate response, blowing up the house. Another little character bit of animation that I liked in this scene was right here where Bumblebee thinks he has done a really good job in killing all the Decepticons, but he's been reprimanded and like a kid who feels a little misunderstood, kind of walks away dejectedly. In this sequence, we had a number of Decepticons who are nothing like any of the other robots in the first movie. This first one, who's called Ravage, here he comes out. He first turns into a fish, and then he turns into this jaguar-ish character, presumably to infiltrate the military base. And then we have these microbots, or what we call ball bots or sphere bots, which basically look like a lot of little BBs or ball bearings. And that's how they infiltrate into the vault itself through the electronics and ventilation conduits. This is one of my favorite shots in the movie. It was also one of our most technically difficult shots. My animator, Chris Williams, animated all those little BBs or spheres, and then started this whole process, which is where the ball bots create this really, really, really thin character whom we called the reed bot or thin man. And the whole premise of this character was that he was so thin that he could hide in plain sight by simply lining himself up to you. We tried to show that his ability to do that by revolving around and around and around him. And my animator, Rob Dressel, did this scene. And I think it's very clear in our animatic that when he does line himself up, it's impossible to see him, but we do kind of go around him quite a bit. Here's the Docbot at the bottom and he finds the shard there. Hope it's clear that that's the same Dr. Bot that basically examines Sam later in the movie. This scene reunites Sam and Michaela with Starscream and Megatron. In this scene, we have Megatron just kind of standing in this little pit. I think he did it much better in the actual film, where he kind of rises ominously in the background behind Michaela. At the time, we called him the Dr. Bot or Doc Bot. He's one of my favorites. Michael wanted this character to have a lot of expression, especially in his hands here. So he had this little kind of evil rubbing of his hands and kind of He'd snap his fingers to get people's attention and command them that way. So we took a little more time with the animation of this character, and I think it paid off for us. One of the things that's kind of interesting about this is that since the character is so small, about 1.5 feet in size, our cameras are really tight here for most of the scene, which is actually great because it's similar to Sam's perspective of this Docbot examining his head. Just as important, especially in this movie, is that it allowed the director, the actors, and the camera crew something to reference while shooting the film, because the characters weren't there during the shooting. It was all going to be put in later in visual effects. When Bumblebee and Optimus come in, we have a nice contrast of shots. Now we're wide and we have much more heroic camera movements in here. Just a nice contrast to the real close-up stuff of Docbot. This scene is what we call the forest fight, or the fight between Optimus and Megatron. And I know it was something that a lot of the fans wanted to see in this movie after the first one, was just an all-out head-to-head battle between Optimus and Megatron. And from what I heard, a lot of people wanted to see Optimus Prime just kick some butt. And I think in the movie, he does. Early on, we were trying to find a good fighting style for Optimus, and some of this feels a little stylized because we had referenced a lot of anime fight sequences when we started out. The actual fight itself in the movie was re-choreographed by the stunt coordinators, I believe. For obvious reasons, which you'll see right here, we didn't distribute this animatic to anybody, I think, really. But for those who Michael showed it to, especially early on, it left the room just completely silent. Everyone was shocked what we had done, and that's where I knew that the story and what Michael and what we were doing was working. When Michael described this scene, we knew it was going to be epic in scale. He wanted this whole aircraft carrier to sink within a matter of minutes. And actually, I had to check and see how fast actually a ship that size could sink. And I believe I read that the Lusitania sank in about 18 minutes, and another liner sank in about 14 minutes, because it always seemed really fast for that size ship. One of the things that we knew this scene was about this, not only the Decepticons returning to Earth, but also killing thousands and thousands of humans and American sailors. So our camera movements were a little more somber, a little more restrained, rather than kind of a little more spectacular. This little wheel bot, or his RC truck robot, his voice is actually, I believe, Russian, played in reverse and sped up. It made it a more comedic character, a little more vulnerable. This SR-71, which turns into Jetfire, was one of the hardest characters to model and to rig up. One of my modelers, Candida Nunez, came in for weeks, and it just was wearing down on her because it was so hard to rig up and develop. And it was actually one of the first things I gave her, assignment-wise. And we had to assure that creating these Transformer characters, even in previs, was the hardest stuff I've ever had to do in CG. Pre-visualization artists are highly specialized. They need to have a lot of experience in just about every aspect of the filmmaking process. Again, here's a little bit of a character moment that Michael wanted in this movie as opposed to the first movie where it was more about the action and straight up fighting. We have inserted a lot of these little bits, pieces, like when he's trying to transform and his leg doesn't go all the way, and when he drops his missiles and he tries to bend down and he tries to grab for him, but his back is given out on him. So that was one of the more fun parts. In most cases, Michael likes to keep the camera very real, meaning that the emotions and motivations were all very much what the cameraman is seeing and reacting to. And so we modeled this right off of the cameraman was an actual parachutist. Michael wanted to shoot this all in one shot. At the very beginning, he wanted this long, round dolly shot, or circle dolly, which was camera placed on a 360-degree, I think a 30-foot track, and go out the little hole and come back in through the keyhole to foreshadow that the Decepticons needed a little itty-bitty robot to actually, spy and find the characters. And here we have a more of your typical Michael Bay destruction action going on. I remember when Michael had asked us to have the two characters jump off this 20-foot rooftop. I didn't know how they were going to do it at the time. Michael came into our work area, our office, and showed us a picture of Devastator, who is a combination or a Constructicon built up of about 6 or 7 large-scale construction vehicles. And he stands about 80 feet tall. We knew this was going to be just a huge challenge, not only for us, but for visual effects. Because he had so many parts to it. And then he wanted it to suck literally everything in sight into his mouth and then spit it out behind him as exhaust. And we knew that the visual effects guys were going to have a lot of trouble with this. Later on, he came in and said he wanted to shoot it in IMAX, and I don't know how they did it, but they did a great job with that. These are the twins characters. We had modeled their actions off of kind of bickering brothers. My animator, Rob Dressel, animated this scene where one of the twins gets basically sucked into the head of Devastator, and his brother comes to save him, which I believe was very similar to how they actually shot it. Pre-visualization is the process of creating animated scenes like these, and essentially they're whiteboards or working previews of sequences or scenes in a movie. What it allows the director to do is to explore, experiment, and really develop his visual structure and visual style for the film. Unfortunately, both characters are yellow, and it's a little hard to distinguish between them, but I think it works out okay. One of the main things that you want to do with these fights, with these Transformers, because they're all made up of thousands and thousands of mechanical pieces, is to make sure your silhouettes are very clear. One of the things that Michael really liked about the ILM animator's test was the shot of Bumblebee kind of putting on his helmet or his shield to show that he's ready to take care of business. This is one of the few scenes with this character right here. His name is Ratchet, and he's supposed to be the medical officer of the Autobots. I was really looking forward to having him actually operate on Optimus and create a super powered up Optimus, but that probably would have taken too much time.